Hello, listeners and fellow book lovers. Welcome to the Book Snug, a bi-weekly conversational podcast about books and the reading life. My name is Stephany.
And I'm Julia.
We're a mother and a daughter who love reading and talking about books, the ones we adore and the ones we don't. We're delighted you're here, so grab your favorite hot drink or ice-cold beverage and settle in for another cozy, bookish chat.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Julia.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here in the Book Snug.
Yes, me too. Me too. Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
If you are new to our corner of the internet, I guess, welcome to the Book Snug. This is just a cozy place to hang out and talk books.
Yes.
If you are friends that have been here for a while, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
Yes. Today's chapter, we're talking about our quarterly review. So this is for April, May, and June. We do this every quarter, and it's just a chance for us to reflect on our reading goals, any books that we read during that quarter that we just are so excited to talk about or not talk about. It's just a structured time to be a little bit more, reflective on our reading than we might be in our regular topics.
Yes.
Before we dive into that, though, Mom, are you drinking anything exciting today?
I don't know that it's exciting, but it is a little bit tropical, so it fits with the summer setting that we're experiencing right now. It's very hot and humid in our little corner of the world. And I am drinking a hot tea, but it is, I think it's Stash's coconut mango. So it feels very tropical. The little hint of coconut on the end is really good. Nice. And we are sitting in my basement, which is much colder than anywhere else in the house and in the world, it feels like right now. So drinking warm tea just feels good. And for you, Julia, who doesn't like the summer at all.
It's hot.
You like to be cold and cuddly.
Yes.
So this is a good place.
And my husband and I, Ben and I, are in a season of busyness. And so we spent most of the past 48 hours outside. So I feel like I'm just a dehydrated, sorry somebody. I just want to lay down in a cold blanket and sleep with a lot of water. So I am drinking water, but then I'm also drinking an iced matcha because of the exhaustion. My brain is...
Okay.
So
we'll see how the show goes. Well, we've already tried recording our opening once, and I lost the train of thought pretty quick.
Well, I did surprise you on a question. I guess for some context, friends, because we knew it was going to be really busy, we recorded way in advance. So we haven't live recorded in like a month or so.
Right. This is the first time we've sat down together.
So we're a little rusty. Bear with us and let's hope the wheels stay on the tracks today.
I hope so. We'll see. Just don't throw me any questions I'm not counting on because...
But that's part of a conversation.
I know, but my brain just instantly goes blank.
Well, speaking of questions.
Okay.
Thinking over the last quarter, so April, May, and June, outside of reading, because we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stands out to you as a fun, memorable thing that you did during the quarter?
I mean, Mother's Day, Father's Day, those are always good times spent with family.
Oh, a cousin got married in May.
Yes, that's true. My niece, my sister's daughter got married. That was a very good time.
You helped me at the market.
Yes. Yeah. We have a cabin in Midwestern Pennsylvania, and we spent some time there, just Jay and I, with his cousin and his brother and their wives, and that was really nice too. But when I think about April and May, it just feels like gray and cold and rainy. And the last 6 weeks or so just feel like kind of a blur. How about you? Are you have any other exciting things that happened?
I mean, so I'm in a season of my life where I have a lot more free time. So I'm engaging in a lot more like activities that I'm loving.
Yeah.
My social life now is so fabulously dynamic when it wasn't before. But two things that come to my mind is we spent a weekend at the cabin with some friends over Memorial Day, and that was so much fun. I haven't been able to do something like that in a very long time. So that was wonderful. Ben and I were reflecting on this the other day, and we said that it was a very life-giving weekend. And so it's nice to have that. And, and the friends that we went with just keep saying, we need to do that again. Yeah. So it was just wonderful. And then the other thing that comes to my mind for this quarter is we were at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair a couple weeks ago for the Highland Games.
Yes.
And it was the hottest day that we've had so far, but it was a lot of fun to first of all, I'm finding that I'm a dork for the Ren Fair because the first time we were there, I just started like getting all teary-eyed because of the childhood like magic and whatever. But because we've also been in Scotland, so hearing the bagpipes, and there was actually a group that played Scotland the Brave.
For the Highland Games,
yes,
yeah.
Seeing some of the heavy lifting games that were going on, because we saw that when we saw, that was a full English sentence, we saw Highland Games when we were in Scotland.
Right.
So to see some of the similar games, to see the dancing, it was just a really cool way to spend a day, and we were both really looking forward to that. So I was really glad that we decided to go, even though it was so hot.
Yeah. And while I was listening to you talk, I completely forgot about the biggest upset in our lives.
Oh.
My son and his fiance, Paige, who was on the show, and Aaron, who was on the show, they adopted a little stray cat. And she was originally going to stay with Paige, and that didn't work out. So she has moved in with us. But we have two
grouchy,
elderly, grouchy brothers.
One's grouchier than the other.
Right. Male cats, and now we have this tiny little
Sprightly
female
little thing
who isn't fixed yet. And
she isn't?
No,
is that her appointment coming up?
She's going to be fixed in 2 weeks. Ooh. But our household has been turned upside down and inside out, trying to figure out how to help these cats get along and keep them from fighting and figuring out sleeping schedules and eating schedules. And it's
personal
just been,
spaces.
Yes, yeah. It's been quite an experience. Yeah. Not something that we were planning on doing anytime soon. I'm not sure I want to go through it ever again, but we're getting there. I mean, we're to the point now where they all can be in the same room without cats hissing at each other. So
there's a lot of gnarly side eyes that happen.
Oh yeah. But they're even getting better with that.
Yeah.
So it's been a process, but it is all working out. So that's probably our biggest thing, because this has been quite a process.
Right.
We're in week number 3 now of trying to get them adjusted to each other.
Yeah.
And we have a sweet outdoor cat. She's completely feral. Yeah. She has no interest in coming inside, but
is in love with all of us.
Well, she especially loves my one male cat, Sam.
Oh my gosh.
But she won't come to the door right now, because when she sees our little...
the new one.
Her name is Crouton. I didn't name her.
No, it was, yes.
I call her Peanut, but her name is Crouton. And our outside cat's name is Boo. When Boo sees Crouton, she like backs away and goes and hides. So we're trying to help her be okay with the situation too. It's just, it's been crazy. We're way off track with books, but
that's fine.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody needs a little catch up from us anyway,
because we haven't been on the mics for so long.
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned that you're ahead on books. How many books have you read this quarter?
I read 20 books.
Okay.
From the beginning of April to the end of June. 8 of those were audiobooks. And actually most of the books I'm going to talk about today were audiobook experiences. I did have 4 DNFs, and they were mostly all in 1 month.
Oh.
They were in May.
Oh.
And I think that kind of put a pall on my reading. I just started to question my ability to choose books that I think I'm going to like.
Yeah.
The other thing, my reading just has felt really meh, really middle of the road. I had a hard time remembering like the standouts, even though I did have 5-star reads. And I think part of that is I'm allowing some of the reading challenges and things I'm doing to over dictate what I'm picking up. And so I'm not really excited about what I'm reading. So I'm going to make some changes, I think, in the next quarter.
Interesting.
More truly mood reading, picking up a book that just sounds good and reading it.
That'll be interesting, because I know you've done reading challenges for so long. Now, I know that you tend to be pretty like lax on them.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting to see like how just true mood reading is going to go.
Yeah. I mean, I just noticed, it was probably in May too, the same month I was putting a lot of books down. Every book I picked up, I was trying to fit into the In Case You Missed It reading challenge. The year for the month was 2017, and I just felt like I was required to pick up books published in that year. And after a while, I just didn't want to do it anymore. And then instead of stopping, I just stopped reading. And that's not good.
No.
I've only read 4 books in June, which is so below my normal. I think my normal average number of books I read in a month is between 7 and 9.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even hitting my halfway mark.
Okay.
What about you, Julie? I think you've already shared your confession of how many books you've read.
So 4. One was an audiobook, and I'm in the middle of one that I started at the end of June.
Okay.
So 4.5 is what I'm looking at.
Okay.
And that is pretty low, but I think it still generally keeps me on track to be where I want to be for my reading goal, like how many books this year. But I'm not, like, I don't care too much about that number at the end.
I was just going to say, for you readers who are listening, we talk about the number of books we read. I say, oh, I'm this many books ahead of my goal.
But it's not serious.
It's not a race.
No.
It's not a competition. If it's any competition at all, it's a competition with myself.
Yeah.
And even that, I'd leave go in a heartbeat.
Right.
If somebody asked me to, if it was required of me.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's not a thing. For me, it's just fun to watch the numbers tick up, but I don't force myself to read books to meet a goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is a competitive read. I have to do like X, Y, and Z. Like, it's not that. Did you have any goals for this quarter? Or rather, how is the progress towards the goals that you had from the beginning of the year?
I'm doing actually pretty well. I've read 45 of my 70 books for Goodreads. So I'm way more than halfway there. Like I said, I'm 10 books ahead now of my, like, what I should be reading on track to meet my goal.
Yeah.
I was at 12 at the beginning of June, and it dropped down to 10. So because I didn't read that much in June, but like I said, it's not, doesn't concern me. I am doing the In Case You Missed It reading challenge. Listeners who have been joining us already know this is a little reading challenge offered by the Book Girls Guide, where you're reading backlist books.
Sure.
Every month represents a year starting in 2012. So I was reading books published in 2016, 2017, and 2018. I think that's how it went. Maybe it was 2015, 2016, 2017. I don't even remember, and I didn't look at it. I'm still doing that, but I am backing way off. If I read one book for that challenge a month, that's good.
Sure.
And then I wanted to read 5 classics this year, and I read 2. I read 2 in this quarter.
Okay.
So
Nice.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. It sounds like it for sure.
Yeah. How about you?
So at my last count, I've read 12 books this year, which I thought it was more than that, but it's not a big deal.
It is not at all.
No. I think my other goals were to maintain not impulse buying, to read from my shelf, and to work on the reading journal that you'd given me, the Modern Mrs. Darcy reading journal. Well, that one hasn't happened.
Okay.
And I think part of that is because I'd be using it as an audio, and because I haven't set up an Audible account yet.
Okay.
I'm trying to plan accordingly, so I'm not dropping $50 a month for...
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
Right. So I'm doing it kind of sparingly. So I think this is just going to be a longer term goal. Pick at it when I can.
Yeah. You should try the library. I'm
I
telling
know,
you, you
I
can get
know.
audiobooks for free.
I know. Well, that's part of it, is I was going to use it as a library. So I probably will just get a library card and then just audiobook it that way.
Yeah.
But there has been no progress made on it yet. I continue to read from my shelf. I do still set up seasonal reading lists and then try to read them during the season. I mentioned that my spring one didn't. I think I would read 1 or 2 off of that. So that maybe is a fail for that one. I don't know.
You read something.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. And I haven't impulse bought any books. No, I bought one.
Okay.
I don't remember when I bought it. I think I bought it in March. So it doesn't count for this quarter.
Okay.
But then I do buy antique books, and I have bought a few of those this quarter.
Okay.
So, we were at an antique store over 4th of July, and I found a version of Pinocchio. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
It's been added to my collection now.
Very cool.
I think our last discussion point here before we get into our books is, do you have any memorable or favorite reading experiences from the quarter?
Well, we always say this, but the 3 Peas in the Pod episode with Lexi, where we read Fourth Wing, that was a pleasant surprise. I liked that book much more than I thought I was going to. I still haven't decided, though, if I'm going to continue on or if I'm just happy to let it be a standalone book for me.
Right.
But I did enjoy talking about the book with Lexi and you. That was fun. I do have a couple other things. I finished listening to Dark Matter by Blake Crouch with your dad.
Yeah.
My husband, Jay, who was also on the show. We listen to audiobooks when we're doing long drives. I think we started this one, I don't know, probably last year.
Oh, wow.
And we just listened to it going back and forth to the land, and we finished it up just a couple weeks ago. It was a second read for me, but it was the first time your dad experienced it, and he really, really liked it. So that was fun. And I think we're going to listen to Children of Time together because I started that on my own. This is a sci-fi by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And I started it on my own, and I got through like the first chapter, and I thought, oh, we have to listen to this together. I think it's going to be really good. I can tell the part of the direction it's going, and I just know that he'll really like it. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the last good reading experience I had is I listened to a nonfiction by Carol Burnett. And it's called In Such Good Company, 11 Years of Laughter, Mayhem, and Fun in the Sandbox. And she just talks about her years on the Carol Burnett show with all of her co-stars like Vicki Lawrence and Tim Conway, Lyle Waggoner, and who's the other guy? Oh, Harvey Korman.
Okay.
That was just so much fun. Carol Burnett is a delight. She's so gracious. She was just so gracious talking about all of the guest stars that came on. She had nothing bad to say about anybody but one person, and she never named the actor. She just said she was glad when they left. But other than that, it was just a really, really good time. It kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of watching old skits from the Carol Burnett show. My sister and I used to come home from school and watch the syndicated shows every day. And I could picture a lot of the skits that she was talking about. Jay and I sat around one night and laughed pretty hard at a couple of them. So that was just a really fun time. I love when my reading does that, when it brings back great memories or it kind of sends me on this internet rabbit hole search. Yeah, good time. So those are my reading focused good experiences for the quarter. What about you, Julia? Did you have any with your 4 books?
I did, but Carol Burnett, I think she's also a friend of Julie Andrews, or am I thinking of the wrong person?
No, she absolutely is. She mentions her in the book several times, actually.
So there is a fabulous skit that they did, the two of them, in the puffiest, most fabulous ball gowns, throwing cake at each other. Carol Burnett actually pulls Julie's away from her chest and shoves a whole piece of cake down the front. It's amazing. Every time it comes up, I laugh so hard.
Yeah. Well, we were laughing about the Gone with the Wind skit where she comes down the steps. She's wearing, in the book, Scarlett O'Hara makes a dress out of drapes. Oh. But in the skit, the drape dress has the drape, the curtain holder.
Curtain
rod. That's the word I'm thinking of. Stuck, like it's still in, it's in the dress. Yeah. Anyway.
That's hysterical.
Yes. Good times.
Yes. My reading experience is so Fourth Wing, definitely. And that's so annoying because I'm very tempted to get into the series.
Yeah.
And I have the second book in my Audible. I'm like, do I listen? Do I not? Do I listen? Do I not? So
I would give it a go. If you don't like it, just turn it off. And then you can say, okay.
Right.
Done with that.
I know. I think it's just the annoyance of and we talked about this.
Right.
I didn't want to read this because everybody else is reading it.
You didn't want to be part of the hype, and now you are.
Now I'm like going down the rabbit hole, and it's just annoying. And I know Lexi's going to get a kick out of that because of how much of a stink I made about it. That one. And then this one is just silly, but I took a couple of days off at the end of June because I had hours to use before things flipped over for the fiscal year. And so I wrote a little summer vacay bucket list of what I wanted to do during that time. Now, my days got a lot busier and packed than I had planned, so I didn't get to all of them. But the first one on that list is to stay up late reading, because summer for me was when I did a lot of that. I don't remember which book I was reading. I think I know which one, but I don't remember. During that week while I stayed up late reading, and I allowed myself to stay up till midnight, 12:30 to read, and that was so wonderful because I haven't done that in a very long time. So that was just a fun I'm on summer vacation kind of thing. So it was enjoyable. But so that just really sneaked in right there at the end of the month.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Should we get into books finally?
I think so.
Okay, great. So I mentioned at the beginning that we talk about books and we put them in a couple of different categories. Generally, these are the books that we're excited to talk about.
Yeah.
So we put them into cream of the crop, which is a favorite, a sleeper hit. So this was one that we weren't expecting it to be what it was or was very surprising. A letdown, something that was disappointing, and then a wild card. So this is anything else that we want to talk about that stands out for the quarter.
Right.
Do you want to get us started off, Mom, with your cream of the crop?
My cream of the crop is an audiobook, and it is a nonfiction memoir.
Okay.
It's called Born a Crime. It's written and narrated by Trevor Noah.
Oh, interesting.
So you may have heard of Trevor Noah. I think he hosted the Late Show? Daily Show. That's right. I'm pretty sure it was the Daily Show.
So neither one
Jon
of us...
Stewart. He took over after Jon Stewart.
Okay, so neither one of us really watch late night shows or daytime shows. So
not much.
It's one of those shows.
And I never watched him as the host.
Correct.
I actually picked this book up based on the recommendation of a friend of mine who said it was one of her favorite books of the year several years ago.
Okay.
The book is about Trevor's childhood and young adult years in South Africa before, during, and after apartheid.
Okay.
So he talks about Nelson Mandela. He talks about the atrocities that took place right at the time where apartheid was being removed.
Sure.
So it wouldn't be before apartheid. It would be during and afterward that he's growing up. It's a very funny book at times, and it covers a lot of difficult topics. So you have this kind of juxtaposition of personal humor, and he's making fun of a lot of cultural things, but there are a lot of really, really difficult things. He shares his own personal struggles being a kid of mixed race in a country where that is originally illegal. Like when he was a child, his mother had to walk behind him and pretend like she was his nurse or his nanny and not his mom. He lived a lot of his young life inside because he couldn't be outside. It was a problem if people saw him. It was very educational for me. Trevor Noah speaks many languages. His father is German and his mother is Xhosa, which is one of the tribes of South Africa. But he talks about his relationship with his father. His mother and father never married. His mother didn't want that. And his father, it took a long time for her to convince him to have a child with her. They had a good relationship, but it was, in my mind, a little bit weird.
Sure.
But I'm just going to share what I wrote on my Goodreads note, because I wrote this right after I finished reading it, and I feel like it expresses my feelings better than I can do right now. I said, this was a great memoir. It's read by the author, which definitely added to my enjoyment. And I will say that if you're going to do this book, you should do it on audio. It's the story of Trevor's childhood and young adult experiences, yes, but it is also the story of his mother and her life, his family, and South Africa from the end of apartheid through the early 2000s. The complexities of race, racism, poverty, domestic violence, and Noah's own experiences as a mixed-race child born a crime under apartheid are offered to the reader. It's often funny, very candid, sometimes sad, and always heartfelt. So I thought it was just excellent. Excellent. You have to be okay with some foul language.
Yeah.
The F word gets tossed around a lot.
Okay.
Especially when he starts talking about being a teenager and a young adult in that environment. And you can definitely pick up on his anger at the cultural situation. And there are some issues with his stepfather, for sure.
Okay.
I don't want to share everything because it's worthwhile to read it in the story. But yeah, definitely difficult reading. Tons of poverty and the experiences that go with that. But he is a good writer and a great narrator, and hearing it with his voice just really improves the reading experience 1,000-fold. So highly recommend.
Okay. And you said you listened to this one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yep.
Wow, what a book to start us off with, Mom.
What are you going to tell us, Julie, about your favorite book?
So my cream of the crop was the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
Oh, of course. This would have to be a cream of the crop.
This is by Annie Barrows and Mariah Shaffer. I can't read my own writing. That's Mariah Shaffer. This is a book that I'd had on my shelf for a while, and I think I went into it with a preconceived idea of what it was going to be. Like, I didn't realize it was an epistolary.
Oh, okay. So you didn't know it was told in letters.
Right. I thought it was going to be like a story.
Yeah.
This is the story of Juliet Ashton, who is kind of a writer by accident.
Yeah. She
wants to write, but a column that she had written during the war, they wanted to make a book out of, but she wasn't a fan of the character.
Okay.
Long story short, she gets sent on a book tour. While part of the book tour, she receives a letter from somebody in Guernsey, which was an island that was, off the coast of France. So it was owned by France for a while and then became a British territory.
Yeah.
And in this letter, a gentleman is saying how he accidentally got a book from hers and wanted to know if she wanted it back, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And a correspondence begins between the two of them. Well, Juliet is also navigating her book tour and the complexities that go along with being a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
And then she starts investigating Guernsey because of some of the other things that come out through these letters. Mm-hmm. And Juliet herself is such a fun character. You get letters from everybody else. So you get to see parts of their voice and hear their stories. This takes place after World War II, so you get a reflection of the grief and the rawness that still exists. At one point in one of the letters, they talk about seeing the ruins of the barracks still on the beaches, and so you see how new the wound still is for some of these people.
Because Guernsey was occupied.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So in that degree, it reflected, or it was a reflection back for me of like, On the Light We Cannot See, of St. Malo.
Yeah.
This book read like magic. It was so easy to get into. I enjoyed all of the characters. There were a couple of men from Guernsey that I had a hard time distinguishing who they were sometimes or how they were different from each other.
Yeah.
But Guernsey itself, from the descriptions, like once I finished the book, I automatically looked up pictures of Guernsey and plane tickets to Guernsey because it just sounds like a fabulous, not village town, but just a wonderfully sweet island to visit. This was a fabulous book to read during the spring.
Yes. I have read that many years ago.
Yeah.
You should watch the movie now.
Have you?
Yes.
Okay. How similar is it to the book?
I can't tell you specifically. Okay. I just know I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Yeah. You would enjoy it.
Sure. And I know Lily James plays Juliet. So yeah, I've looked at it. I've thought about it.
Yeah. That's a beloved book. Many people like it.
Yes. It was wonderful. And I'm so mad I waited so long to read it.
Well, welcome to the club.
Right. Okay. Sleeper hit. What was your happy surprise?
My happy surprise is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This is marketed as a thriller. I would not label it as a thriller. I would label it as a mystery suspense story, heavy on the suspense. It's about two women who share the same birthday. Their names are Alex and Josie. Alex is a famous podcaster. Her podcast focuses on women who have overcome tremendous obstacles to become very successful. She is ending that podcast because she feels like it's done what it was supposed to, and she's starting to think what direction she wants to go now with her podcasting. Her birthday party is being held at this restaurant. All of her friends are there, her sisters, her husband. They're having a great time. They're very well to do. She's dressed nicely. And then you have Josie, who it's also her birthday. She's celebrating at the restaurant, but this is not normally the type of restaurant they would go to. She is married to a man that is much older than her. They are not well to do. And she is struggling with her life and where she's headed. And she sees Josie and is immediately interested in her. So they meet in the bathroom of this restaurant. the first time. And then Josie decides to reach out to her later and talks her into, for her podcast, interviewing Josie about her life because Josie is about to make some changes. So that is where this story starts.
Interesting.
There are podcast excerpts in the book. From the very beginning, something happens. And this book has like an underlying current of menace and dread throughout that just ratchets up and up and up. I listened to this on audio. This is another book I highly recommend on audio because of the format, because there are podcast pieces and there are interviews with other people. It's a full cast recording. So Josie and Alex have different voices. There are male actors who voice the husbands. This becomes like an obsessive relationship, just so you know.
Sure.
And Josie is quite interesting. I don't want to say anything other than that, but the whole time the story's going on, you're just thinking there's something not right here. What is going on? And Lisa Jewell is so good at just keeping you wanting to know what the heck is going on. I really like her as a suspense writer because she always has at least one person that you can be sympathetic toward. With a lot of thrillers and suspense mysteries, you hate everybody.
Right.
But I always find with Lisa Jewell, there's at least one person, and usually more than one, that you really can like. You can really sympathize, even if they make bad decisions, and people make bad decisions in here. You really care about what's happening with them. So I don't want to give anything else away. You have to listen to the book, but it's a very satisfying suspense. The reason I'm saying it's not a thriller is because there's no immediate danger to anybody. Okay. You're just getting this story of one woman's life, but it just keeps getting weirder and weirder and weirder. Okay. There is some danger with any suspense. It's going to ratchet up and the end of the book is going to be like bonkers. A little crazy. Yeah. And this is a little bonkers. Okay. Because it's a suspense mystery. It's not domestic necessarily, but, if you like that kind of story, I would highly recommend this. And even if you're not a person who normally goes in this direction, I recommended this book to my mom just to see what she would think. And she gave it 5 stars. Lexi gave it 5 stars. Yeah. So I think you should give it a try. My sister did not like it quite that much because she didn't like the characters, but it was very, very good. Definitely a great beach, pool, summertime read.
It's easy to get into and stay in?
Yes. Okay. Oh, I read it in less than 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to read what I wrote for Goodreads. Very thought-provoking mystery suspense with an excellent title. That's the other thing. Keep the title in mind. Compelling from the beginning, fantastic listening experience told with multimedia, story, podcast episodes, interviews, and TV series excerpts. I thoroughly enjoyed the book and have continued to think about it since finishing. There are some despicable characters in here, but this is very nuanced. I felt compassion for everyone at one point or another. Would highly recommend to anyone wanting a well-crafted, suspenseful mystery story. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, it's not one I'm reading, but it sounds.
I know it's not a book that you would pick up, and I'm not sure I would recommend it to you, but I would recommend it to a pretty wide audience.
Right. But the format of it sounds very interesting, specifically how you're talking about as audio, how you have all of those different things that come into play. Like that to me demonstrates a very high craft. So that in and of itself would be intriguing for me to tiptoe into.
It's very good. Sure. It is very good. If you are a person who likes to have an idea of what they're getting into, if you need trigger warnings, I would definitely investigate that before you just dive right into this book.
Sure.
I'm not going to share any of those on this show because I think our listeners are adults and they can do their own research. And I don't want to ruin a reading experience for somebody because I share triggers. What about you, Julia? What's your sleeper hit?
My sleeper hit is everyone in my family has killed someone.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. We picked 2 kind of difficult books for... Okay, go ahead.
So that's Benjamin Stevenson.
Okay.
Right? I think that's...
Yeah. And
you've talked about this before.
I have, yeah.
Yes. This one was so much fun to read. Another hard one. There's a lot of death in this book, obviously.
Yeah.
But
that's what I meant.
Right. But I don't think it would be nearly as serious as your book is.
No.
I mean, death is serious. Let me not be flippant about it. But this book is told from the perspective of Ernest Cunningham,
yes,
who goes by Ern or Ernie. And there is some reputation to the Cunningham name because of some historic involvement with seedy blackmailing stuff.
Yeah.
And they're together at a ski resort in Australia for a forced family reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And things are already really tense going into this because Ernie is considered the black sheep of the family because he testified against his brother in a case that sent his brother to prison.
Right.
And the family reunion is happening the day the brother is being released from prison.
Right.
This becomes, what is it, a closed loop murder where because of the
isolation.
Snow, right. The resort gets shut down. You can't get in and out of it, and people just start dying.
Right. So the murderer is among the suspects.
Right.
Nobody can come or go.
Right.
Yeah.
This was really fascinating to read because with the title, Everyone in My Family Has Killed Somebody, Ernest, so it's like I said, it's told from his perspective. And
first person.
Yes, first person. So as he's going throughout the book and giving you the information, not only is he transparent and saying, hey, these are the pages that the deaths are going to happen on. Mm-hmm. He also takes a look at each person in his family and reflects on the history that they bring, whether they have killed somebody or not.
Mm-hmm. Accidentally or purposefully.
Not. Right. Yeah. I will say that I had a little bit of a tricky time keeping track of some of the background stuff of the family. And that's just because I don't read police stuff very often. So I didn't really know exactly what they were talking about or how it all connected.
I don't think all of that matters all that much.
No, but it was setting up the foundation. Mm-hmm. I knew enough to understand what was happening, but I didn't get all the details. I will also say that I realized it was an isolated situation, but I felt that some of the details about how it was resolved were a touch too convenient, were not easy to put the pieces together. And so I felt like it came way out of left field.
Okay.
But that could also just have been that I was reading to read and that I wasn't reading for the clues. So there might have been lots of clues along the way, and I just didn't put them together.
You were just along for the ride.
Right.
Yeah.
But I highly enjoyed this. I thought that that Ernie's voice was engaging and it was funny and very empathetic about the people around him. So much fun. I want to read the second one where everybody on this train is a suspect. Yeah. I want to read that
That's
one.
good too. That's a good time. These are just good time books to me.
They're like modern Agatha Christie adjacent.
Right. And the whole time Ernie is telling you how this is related to Agatha Christie. Right. Not specifically, but he's telling you what to look for. And then he helps you organize the clues. And then we'll say, now this should happen next.
Right. Or there are times where he's talking about the rules of a murder mystery and he's like, well, because this goes against rule number 7, we know it can't be that. And so he very transparent about what's going on.
And yet it's still a surprise, which is so funny.
Right. Yeah. No, this was a wonderful read.
Yeah.
And I read it so quickly, I just wanted to keep reading.
Yeah. I enjoyed that too very much.
Yeah. Okay, letdown, Mom.
Time for the letdowns.
Yes.
I didn't really have any. I think because I had such a middle of the road reading quarter that it was hard to pick out a letdown because nothing really was a letdown. So I'm going to pick a book that I think I expected more from and just ended up being fine. So I guess that's what you would call a letdown. Sure. After that big explanation. I read The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. If the author's name sounds familiar, he wrote Never Let Me Go.
Okay.
Which is a very speculative story based in the future. This story is based during King Arthur's time.
Oh.
And it's about a husband and a wife who live in a community where people don't remember things. They will be, well, for instance, there's a young girl that gets lost and everybody goes crazy trying to look for her. And then just gradually they forget what they're doing and they forget about her. She comes back and they don't even remember that she was gone.
Oh, gosh.
But it's worse than that because people don't remember their own history. Like this couple, the husband doesn't remember that he used to be a very important person. He doesn't remember that. They remember they have a son, but only sometimes. And then they don't remember where he is.
Okay.
So this book is very much about memory and how that shapes who we are, how it shapes how we interact with people, and then how it shapes how we go forward in our life. So anyway, this husband and wife decide to go on a quest because they're remembering more and more that they have a son and they believe he lives in a neighboring village. This becomes a quest story, which is kind of interesting because we're going to be talking about quests coming up here soon.
Right.
So they go on this quest and of course they meet different people along the way. And these people remember more or less than they do. There is some investigation of death and losing a partner or losing someone you love. And then there's this whole other portion that has to do with King Arthur and Merlin and what they did to maintain peace in the kingdom. It was fine. It was a fine story. I think my biggest problem is I was completely unconnected to the characters. So it was not a story that drew you in and made you empathetic towards anybody. You definitely felt like this was a story that had a lesson to teach.
Sure. Okay.
And then the other thing about it is I was just mostly bored most of the time. And I don't know if it's because I wasn't connected or didn't really care about the characters. I was just reading to find out what was going on with this memory loss. And I don't know. I just expected more from it. I expected more emotional pull and I wasn't getting that. I expected to like the characters more. And I didn't care. Boredom, I think, is probably the worst thing to say when you're reading a book. And it makes me feel bad because I really do like Ishiguro as an author. I loved Never Let Me Go. And I do have 2 other books of his that I would like to read. So I'm hoping that this is just like a one-off. It is his lowest rated book on Goodreads, I noticed. And that makes me sad because I thought this was going to be great.
Yeah. Which this is actually a book on my TBR list.
Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd recommend you read it.
Okay.
I think mileage varies depending on the person.
Right,
and maybe my expectations of it were too high and that's why it felt more like a letdown.
Right. If you were feeling restless and this just wasn't quite doing what it needed to, then that would make sense.
Yeah. So that was my biggest disappointment. And then I'm just going to mention here the amount of DNFs I had and how much time I put into some of them before I put them aside was just kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
And it really does. I mean, I'm a big believer in putting a book aside if you don't like it. But when you're having one book after another that's just not working, that gets to be a little bit depressing.
Yeah. So I ran into a little bit of that. My letdown, because I only read so few, that I don't have a letdown.
Okay.
But I did start a couple of books that I was excited to read. Like I obviously have them. I'm obviously excited to read them. But they just weren't what I wanted to read. So I got a chapter in, or I got 2 chapters in, or like I was reading Elizabeth by Margaret George. Good story. It's just not what I wanted at that point. So I'm like 70 pages in and I don't know when I'm going to come back to it.
Yeah.
And some of the other books for spring in my spring list, again, very excited to read them, started them, just not what I wanted at that point.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few books that I have that are a little dog-eared about where I started, and it'll have to wait till next year, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I had 5 DNFs. The one I'm definitely going to read, but I'm just not in the mood for it.
Right.
And that's The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. But that is a hard book. It's about World War I. You're in the middle of the fighting, and it's a little bit of a slow go, at least where I'm at. And I'm finding I don't have the patience for that right now, but I think I will really like it. But I've picked it up 3 times now and put it down. I've tried to listen to it. Now I'm going to try to read it. But there were 4 other books. One of them is Jane Steele. I forget who the author was, but that's based on Jane Eyre.
Oh.
Except the woman is a serial killer.
Oh, my.
But she idolizes Jane Eyre, and there are so many references to Jane Eyre in the story. But I just got to the point where I didn't like the main character, and I didn't want to spend time with her.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like that was happening over and over and over again. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not really reading any books right now. I'm listening to a book that I'm loving, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping I get out of this funk.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like we don't have a podcast that you kind of need to read for.
I know.
So.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a wild card for this quarter, though?
I do. My wild card for this quarter were the classics I read.
Mm-hmm.
I read The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. I loved it, but I am going to tell our listeners and you that it is not a science fiction read. I always thought that it was, but I would definitely label this as fantasy because it's based in like what was written in 1946. I'm pretty sure that was the book was contemporary to the time, and it was about people who were going to Mars, Earthlings who were going to Mars.
Okay.
There are very few Martians in the whole story.
Oh.
He uses Mars and the colonization of Mars to investigate human character.
Okay.
The good and the ugly parts of human nature and humanity. I love Ray Bradbury's writing. It's terrific. And he's always very philosophical in what he's doing. So I really enjoyed it, but I could see how people would not like this book because it's not what you think you're getting when you read the title. So I loved it, but I'm not sure who I would recommend it to. And then the second classic I read was Jane of Lantern Hill. That's L.M. Montgomery, the author who wrote Anne of Green Gables. And Ellen Montgomery is just such a lovely nature writer. It's just so beautiful. And she describes Prince Edward Island with such love and care and just poetic language. So I loved that. I didn't always love Jane. I don't know why. She rubbed me kind of the wrong way. Sometimes. She went from being this mousy, well, she was being abused. I mean, I'm going to come right out and say she lived in the city with her grandmother and her mother. Her grandmother's very wealthy and the kind of woman who just bosses people around and you do what she says or you don't have anything. So she pretty much controls her daughter and controls Jane, who is her granddaughter. So she's just this kind of mousy, awkward girl. And then she goes and lives with her father one summer, who she just finds out is still living. She thought he was dead. And over the course of this one summer, she blossoms into this wonderful person. But it almost went from mousy to Little Miss Sunshine. And I don't know. I struggled with that a little bit. Like the change was almost too much. And she was perfection when it was all done. But other than that, I love this too. So 2 classics down. I have 3 to go. But those were my wild cards.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Ella Montgomery, my wild card is the graphic Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, okay. All right.
So this was by Mariah Marsden. This was actually my first. So you and I started to read Anne of Green Gables when I was growing up, but we never finished the first one. We didn't.
Yeah.
So I have never actually read the whole story. And I have tried on a couple of occasions to read the book, but I think I just never got very far. And I don't know if it was because of the writing or because I had a preconceived idea of what it was. But this graphic novel, the imagery it's whimsical, but also very tender. And I think it's the full series.
It's the full first book.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that much time passed in the first book.
Yeah.
But now that I've read this graphic novel, which I read in one sitting and was absolutely enthralled with it, I'm very excited to read the actual book now because the graphic novel was the toe dipper for me, I think, that introduced me to a world that I now very much want to be in. And you gave me a very pretty copy, or
You kind of took it.
I kind of took it of Anne of Green Gables. So I'm excited to sit with that too.
Yeah.
But this was a wonderful way to spend a spring evening and just read the story and look at the illustrations with Anne with her bright red hair and her fiery spirit, and it was wonderful. And like, I know the Anne of Green Gables story. There's parts of it that I'm very familiar with, but I think to see it played out in a graphic novel form, much like how I was talking to Lexi about when we were talking about Dune, how the graphic novel was probably a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Approachable.
Easier to yes, approachable. I think this felt the same way for Anne of Green Gables with me. So this was the introduction, but now I want the next thing.
I think too, you might enjoy the story and the writing as an adult.
Yeah.
In a way that you probably didn't appreciate it when we were reading it. Because we read that at night, didn't we? In bed, yeah.
And like, I enjoyed that time together and reading it. But I wonder if I needed to read some classic writing in order to understand what Ellen Montgomery was doing and how she was doing it. So, yeah,
the graphic novel I think is very well done. But I already told you, I couldn't read it. I did read it, but it just annoyed me. I couldn't look at Anne because I hated the shape of her nose. It was just one of those things that I don't understand why the artist made that decision for her, because it's just this triangle stuck in the middle of her face. Everybody else looks normal, but Anne looks like Raggedy Andy, and I mean Raggedy Ann, and I just couldn't do it. It made me mad.
Sorry, Mom.
I'm glad it was helpful for you, because Anne of Green Gables it's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, Ellen Montgomery's nature writing is just fabulous.
Right.
And you get that in Anne of Green Gables too.
And I figured it's about time I read Anne of Green Gables, for crying out loud. So, yeah. Maybe that and reading Little Women will be my challenges for next year.
Okay.
Because I haven't read either of those. And I feel like I should.
I can't remember if I read Little Women or not. I don't think I ever did.
I feel like I need to, because Nana's talked about it so widely. So like, I just feel like I need to.
I know. That's a book that she's read several times, but she did tell me the last time that she felt like Marmee was a little too preachy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't compare because I don't think I've ever read it.
Well, and I got her the really pretty version of Little Women for I don't remember why. And she was like, well, thanks. I love this. But I didn't like it the last time I read it.
That is actually the fear of rereading childhood favorites, is that you're going to find out they're not as good as you thought they were.
Right. And what part is nostalgia versus what the story actually is.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, to tie up this very dynamic conversation, what are you currently reading?
Well, I am currently listening to I Cheerfully Refuse by Leif Enger. It's his newest book. It's a speculative, kind of apocalyptic story. It's
we definitely talked about this.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I just started it yesterday. It feels very mythical to me. I'm almost getting a feeling like it's going to be the Odyssey-like. So I've just gotten started. I'm really just meeting the main characters, and I'm being introduced to the world. It's definitely kind of a bleak environment. Reading is frowned upon. You have these two very distinct layers of society. You have the astronauts, which is just the term for like the ruling class. Okay. Very wealthy, very small number of people. And then you have all of the rest of everybody who are just struggling to survive. So I don't know. I have no idea which direction it's going to go or what's going to happen, but I love Leif Enger's writing. I'm really liking the main character who is narrating pretty much in first person. So it's good so far. And then the only other thing I'm truly reading right now is I'm finishing up Midsummer Mysteries, which is a compilation of Agatha Christie short stories for the summertime. It's a naked hardback, beautiful cover, beautiful end pages, just fun, nostalgic, comfortable mysteries. So that's really all I'm doing right now. Okay. How about you?
I'm reading Children of Time.
Oh, okay. Wow, we are really lining up here.
But I'm about 100 or so pages in, so I'm significantly further in the book.
Yeah.
What I will tell you, and it's no spoilers or anything, this does err a little bit more on the side of not philosophy, but the way that the story is told is it really makes you think about what does the future look like? What does the future of humanity look like? And there was one scene for me. Now, granted, I'm only 100 pages into this 500-page book, but there was one scene for me that really hit home the grief of how much time has passed. So if you think about it, and again, no spoilers, but this story is set way in the future.
Yeah.
So the best way that I can kind of compare it of like if somebody from Jesus's time, when you think about all of the time that has elapsed from that,
Till
how
now.
many people have passed, how many things have happened that have been forgotten.
Yeah.
Because they talk in one part of the book about technology that they don't know how to operate anymore. That it's foreign technology to them, but it's just older tech.
Yeah.
It just really made it very real to me how vast time is and what that is to live within that vast time.
Right. Hence the title, Children of Time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm very much looking forward to that. I love science fiction that has a philosophical element to it. I think that's one of the things that saved Dune for me was just considering some of those things, like the religious element. Yeah, for sure. And how it had been corrupted and
And this is, again, as far as I'm into it so far, this is an incredibly intelligent book. So when you look at all of the different components that are in this story, things have been incredibly researched, incredibly like fact checked. So as you're reading, you're like, okay, this makes sense every step of the way.
Yeah.
I do think it's a story that Dad is really going to like.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, for people who haven't been reading or enjoying their reading life lately, we certainly had a lot to talk about. Readers, listeners, friends, we would love to hear what you've been reading lately. We are going to put posts up on Facebook and Instagram if you want to share what you've been reading and loving or reading and hating.
Yeah.
Please let us know.
We're not reading
at all. Yeah. We like everybody here.
Right.
Please share because we would love to hear. We want to let you know that our next episode, which will be released in 2 weeks, is going to be about quest stories or road trips, any kind of book that involves traveling from one place to another, most times seeking something.
Right.
It can be a treasure, it can be answers or the truth, it can be seeking yourself. Whatever it is, people are moving from place to place because we all, I think, do a lot of moving and traveling in the summertime, maybe more so than other times of the year. And we thought this would just be a good time to talk about quest stories.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll finish I Cheerfully Refuse by then and I can talk about it.
That would be interesting.
So please join us if that sounds interesting to you. Even if it doesn't sound interesting to you, we'd love to have you join us
Either way,
just for
please.
fun. If you're enjoying our show, we would just ask if you want to rate us or review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Ratings and reviews just move us up in the algorithm so that we're more visible to more people. We also want to let you know that we're now on YouTube.
Yes.
In YouTube Music. So if you just type in the Book Snug podcast in the search bar, we'll pop up. But we are still available everywhere else we've always been. So we're
Google.
Right, because Google doesn't do any kind of hosting now.
Annoying.
Yeah. They don't host any podcasts anymore. So anyway, and then the final thing, if you are enjoying the show and you just want to let us know privately your comments, your thoughts, what you've been reading, you can do that through the fan mail button on the episode through Buzzsprout. So please do that because we would love to hear you. And I don't know that you have to log in to be able to do that. I think you can just send us a text.
Yeah.
So I think that covers all of the business portion of this podcast episode. We want to thank you so much for spending part of your day with us today here in the Book Snug. And we'd love to have you join us again in the next chapter.
Bye, friends. We'd love for you to continue today's conversation with us at the BookSnug_podcast on Instagram and at the BookSnug podcast on Facebook. All of our episodes can be found wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as at our website, thebooksnugpodcast.buzzsprout.com, where show notes for every episode can be found. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at thebooksnugpodcast@gmail.com.
As C.S. Lewis, one of our favorite authors, famously said, "You can never have a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me." And we wholeheartedly agree.